Before we get started with the video, it is time once again to thank Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this one. Today, in our modern world, there are plenty of reasons to have a VPN, or virtual private network, as having one is a fantastic way to really give yourself not only great peace of mind, but also a great sense of freedom whenever you use the internet. I say this because having a VPN through Surfshark works in several great ways. First off is its great protection it provides, making sure your time spent online is private, safe, and secure. But also, having this service through Surfshark allows you to change the region in which you access the internet from, allowing you to bypass region-locked content, stuff like movies and TV shows that are only available in certain regions of the world on streaming platforms. Because of these reasons, I firmly believe that having a VPN is a great way to have peace of mind when it comes to using the internet in our modern world. And right now is a great time to get one, because if you do so through Surfshark and use the promo code SHOGUNATE, you can receive 83% off and 3 extra months free. You can find a link below to where you can check out this amazing offer. I highly recommend it. So, with that said, let's get on to the video. In the last episode, the armies of the East and West finally met in all-out battle upon the field of Sekigahara. It was to be, by far, the greatest clash of samurai Japan would ever know. With their numbers roughly equal, the battle itself was a hard back and forth, one that Ishida Mitsunari and the West stood a very high chance of winning were it not for those that decided to betray him. Namely Kobayakawa Hideaki, who in the midst of the moment turned coat to attack the Western army, dooming Mitsunari. As Tokugawa Ieyasu and his forces of the East were able to at last break through to claim victory. Now, with Mitsunari fleeing for his life, the path is set for Ieyasu to assume his position atop the country and bring it into peace once more. After 6 hours of what had been some of the most intense warfare Japan had ever seen, thousands laid dead upon the field of Sekigahara. Streams of blood must have flowed freely, and the mud from the previous night's rain must have soon taken a grisly color mixed with the carnage of the day's events. Scores of bodies likely now rested headless upon one another, as victorious Eastern Army soldiers scavenged over the corpses, making sure no high-ranking fallen samurai was left unaccounted for. As those still living took their trophies and continued onward, with heads atop spears, adorning sashes, and carried within their very hands. There was no telling if this was to be the final great battle of the samurai, but for many, I would imagine they believed this was the end, the last great chance to make a name for themselves in the midst of war. Tokugawa Ieyasu, victorious, upon realizing his triumph, had sprung into action. As I mentioned in the previous episode, it is believed that he did not even don his helmet until after he was certain the battle had been won. Now it was time for the cleanup. Throughout the course of the battle, Ieyasu was lucky that none of his important allies had lost their lives during the fighting. The same could not be said for the Western Army, as leaders such as Otani Yoshitsugu and Shima Sakon had both died, both of them being some of the largest and closest supporters of Ishida Mitsunari. It is believed that after the field was secured, Ieyasu awaited his generals as they came up to report to him. Now it is hard to say what words they actually shared, or really know in what order they arrived, but one telling of this encounter goes as follows. First, it is said that Kuroda Nagamasa was the initial general to ride up to Ieyasu's position, to which Ieyasu is believed to have highly praised him, stating, "Today's victory is entirely due to your loyalty and effort. As long as my house flourishes, the Kuroda shall want for nothing." Ieyasu is then believed to have personally gifted Nagamasa a treasured short sword. The next to arrive were Honda Tadakatsu and Fukushima Masanori, both of which Ieyasu praised as well, as it was Masanori's unit that had seen some of the thickest fighting. After this, it is said that Ieyasu's fourth son, Matsudaira Tadayoshi, entered the camp, helping the wounded Ii Naomasa. If we remember back to the previous episode, Ii Naomasa's unit was to accompany that of Tadayoshi's. Yet Naomasa, eager to take the fight to the Western Army, had led his unit hard against the enemy line, and even attempted to chase down the fleeing Shimazu, only to be hit by a bullet in the shoulder. If bandages had not already been brought up for Naomasa, Ieyasu surely would have been quick to call for them. Naomasa likely told Ieyasu how well Tadayoshi fared during the battle, and remarked, "But hawks of fine stock always turn out well," which then caused Ieyasu to return the compliment, reminding Naomasa that a good trainer is still necessary, no matter how well bred the hawk. It was only after the arrival of all others that at long last Kobayakawa Hideaki, the great turncoat, is believed to have made his way onto the scene. Obviously, this must have been a tension-filled moment as Hideaki threw himself before Ieyasu, apologizing for not only appearing to stand with Mitsunari, but also for his long period of inaction during the battle itself. To make up for his mistake, Hideaki petitioned Ieyasu to allow him to lead the attack on Mitsunari's stronghold of Sawayama, and it appears that Ieyasu, in the end, consented. Yet another means in which to firmly test Hideaki's loyalty. Eventually following this, a formal head-viewing ceremony would commence, in which Ieyasu bore witness to those who gave their lives for the Western cause. The one head he likely wanted to see the most but did not have before him was that of his main enemy, Ishida Mitsunari, as following the chaotic end of the battle, Mitsunari had endeavored to flee the scene. Now, Ieyasu would be forced to send out units to hunt him down. Not long after the battle was done and heads were being viewed, Ieyasu's son and heir, Tokugawa Hidetada, finally arrived. His foolish attempt and failure to seize Ueda from the Sanada had caused him to completely miss the battle and nearly cost his father everything. As if he had been there with his additional troops, the battle would have started out much more in Ieyasu's favor. Instead, the battle had been a great gamble, one that could have gone either way were it not for those who decided to betray Mitsunari. For this, Ieyasu refused to speak with his son for some time, his lapse in judgment getting tied down trying to take a castle he was never supposed to seize nearly cost the Tokugawa the entire war. If anything, Hidetada's failure now put a great deal of stress onto Ieyasu, who was now likely much more concerned about the future of the family once Hidetada was to succeed him one day. However, with the Battle of Sekigahara won and the Western Army in full retreat, the way was clear for Ieyasu to further advance towards Kyoto and Osaka, clearing aside any other last pockets of resistance along the way. As soon enough, after bitter fighting during Hideaki's assault on Sawayama, the castle would fall, leaving many of Mitsunari's family dead. By this point, as Ieyasu neared Osaka, Mori Terumoto was still stationed there, right where Mitsunari had previously placed him. Yet now, with Mitsunari defeated, Ieyasu had to figure out what to do with the Mori. Kikawa Hiroye had been the driving force behind the Mori clan's disobedience at Sekigahara. As if we remember back, he had been the one who had made a secret pact with the Tokugawa in the aftermath of what many in the Mori camp believed was a disgrace upon Terumoto by Mitsunari for placing him so far back behind the action. But now, Terumoto was essentially at the mercy of Ieyasu. It is believed that Ieyasu actually felt no remorse towards the Mori, as their inaction itself was perceived as dishonorable, being that the Mori had completely sat out of the Battle of Sekigahara. They had forsaken the oath they had made to the Western Army, and breaking an oath was something that some believe Ieyasu could not forgive, no matter who the oath was to. Personally, I think it was just a convenient excuse to cut down the power of the Mori, as the Mori had become the most significant clan in the West. This leads into what is the truth, how Ieyasu would see fit to punish the Mori, as they would come to see a massive reduction in territory under his rule. For this, Kikawa Hiroye must have been completely distraught, that in his actions to preserve the Mori, he had actually severely damaged them. Over the coming weeks, Ieyasu would cement his position as the battles that had erupted across Japan began to end. From the conflicts in the Tohoku region in the north to the campaigns on the island of Kyushu to the south. With Ieyasu's clear victory, hostilities began to cease. The conflict we today call the Sekigahara War was over. As for Mitsunari, he would at last be captured by an eastern samurai named Tanaka Yoshimasa, and not long after, he too would be reunited with other Western Army generals who had been caught as well, that of Konishi Yukinaga and Ankokuji Eike. Interestingly enough, for Yukinaga, upon his capture it is said that he had been offered the chance to commit seppuku, yet due to the fact that he was a Christian, he firmly declined the idea of killing himself. Yet the actions of Yukinaga mattered little. Mitsunari was the true prize. For several days he was to be put on public display as a traitor for all to see. He was paraded through city streets and shackled before crowds of people. Even then, it is believed he kept his head held high, not letting the circumstances drown his pride. And why should they? He had done what he thought to be right. He had championed the Toyotomi name in the face of one who had aimed to usurp it, and no matter what his own personal ambitions may have been, would he have succeeded, he should have at least held no regrets in his conviction. By the 6th of November, roughly 2 weeks after the Battle of Sekigahara, they were all executed at Rokujo Gawara in Kyoto. Of the other prominent Western Army samurai who survived the battle and were able to make a full retreat were that of Shimazu Yoshihiro and Ukita Hidei, who were both able to escape back to the Shimazu homeland in Kyushu. It would be here Hidei would seek shelter for some time, while his actual domain back in Honshu was to be seized. The Western Army was officially no more, and all those who saw fit to challenge the Tokugawa were now either dead, defeated, exiled, or forced into hiding. After 2 years of scheming and stirring the pot, Ieyasu had won, and now held a commanding grip over the nation, something that perhaps had long been his ambition. Under his rule, he could build a strong regime, one that could hope to stand the test of time. The way was clear for him to establish his new military government. So, what can we learn? As the Battle of Sekigahara came to a close, those of the West that were defeated fled the field as Tokugawa Ieyasu savored his victorious moment, while in time he was to confront troublesome figures such as Kobayakawa Hideaki, and later his own son and heir, Tokugawa Hidetada. The hunt was now on for Ishida Mitsunari and other Western Army generals who had escaped in the final chaotic minutes of the fight. And not long after, Mitsunari, Konishi Yukinaga, and Ankokuji Eike would all be captured and eventually executed in Kyoto, with Ieyasu now standing as the most powerful lord in the country, and with no one left to challenge his authority. The door was now open for him to fully establish his grip across the land. In the next episode, Tokugawa Ieyasu will at long last achieve his destiny and be named the new shogun, thus giving birth to the Tokugawa shogunate. Once again, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, Surfshark. Don't miss out on your chance to get an amazing deal on your very own VPN. And with that said, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell if you enjoyed this video and found it to be most informative.